Hello everyone and welcome to webinar How to Set Up a Company in Australia. My name is Cheetal, Senior Support Team Member, and I'll be your host for today's webinar. Before we get started, I would like to provide some important information. I have uploaded handout which can be downloaded and saved on your system for your ready reference. If you have any questions, you can email me at trustdeed.com.au and I'll try to answer them at the earliest. Without further delay, we'll start with our webinar. The most suitable business structure is usually the company structure. Registering a company is a big step in business life cycle. There are several questions popping up while registering a company which are usually left unanswered. This webinar will try to answer your questions to the extent possible. A disclaimer is provided in the presentation. Please read the disclaimer before we proceed ahead. In this webinar, we'll discuss how a company can be set up in Australia and the basic requirements for the company registration. The main topic of today's presentation will be what is a company name, difference between business name registration and company registration, steps to register a company, consents required before setting up a company, operating rules, and how to easily register a company. Before deciding on company structure for business, it is essential to understand what is a company. Company is an entity that has separate legal existence from its owners. Its legal status gives company the same rights as a natural person. That means a company can incur debt, own property, sue, and be sued. The owners of company are known as members or shareholders, and companies are managed by company officers who are called directors. There are several cases which states that company has a separate legal entity, and one of them is Lee versus Lee Air Farming Limited. In this case, Mr. Lee formed a company for carrying on the business of aerial top dressing. Mr. Lee was the sole director and also the majority shareholder. He was also appointed as an employee of the company at a salary arranged by him. Mr. Lee was killed while piloting the company's aircraft in the course of aerial top dressing. His widow claimed compensation under the New Zealand Workmen's Compensation Act 1922. The appeal was allowed and widow was entitled to compensation. It was held that the company and Mr. Lee were distinct legal entities and therefore capable of entering into legal relations with one another and employing Mr. Lee as a chief pilot of the company. This decision was based on the decision in famous case Salomon versus Salomon and Company Limited, where concept of a separate legal personality of a company was created, which means that one person may function in dual capacities. Now that we know what a company is, so let's go a little further to see what is a proprietary company. Section 45A subsection 1 of the Corporation Act 2001 defines a proprietary company as a company that is registered as a proprietary company or converts to a proprietary company under the Corporation Act. A proprietary company must either be limited by shares or be an unlimited company with a share capital. Section 113 of the Corporations Act states that a proprietary company must have no more than 50 non-employee shareholders and must not engage in any activity that would require disclosure to investors under Chapter 6, except for an offer of its shares to the existing shareholders or employees or subsidiary of the company. If a proprietary company contravenes Section 113, one consequence is that ASIC may require it to convert to a public company. The most common confusion while setting up a business structure is whether to register a business name or set up a company. Before you get started with your business, you have to decide which business structure best suits you. Whether you want to register your business name or want to set up a company structure for your business. If you're looking for corporate structure, company registration is right for you. An Australian company can conduct business throughout Australia without needing to register in individual states and territories. A business name is simply a name or title under which a person or entity conducts a business. In Australia, unless you fall within an exemption, you must register your business name. We will have a look into the basic difference between business name registration and company registration. A business is usually a starting point for a small to medium-sized venture. The reason being that the cost of setting up a business is relatively low and there are less legal formalities as compared to company structure. Business names are required to be registered with ASIC, for which you'll need your Australian business number, that is ABN, a postal address and a physical business address. There are, however, few exceptions for registering a business name. For example, a sole trader does not have to register a business name with ASIC if they trade under their own name. However, they must apply for an ABN. The money the business earns is the income that needs to be claimed on proprietor's personal tax return. Tax-wise, in the eyes of ATO, you are seen as individual, which means that individual tax rates apply. The owners of a business is solely responsible for any debts the business suffers. If the business has bad debt, creditors are within their legal rights to repossess the proprietor's personal belongings and private assets. A company is much more complex and expensive structure and is often favored by medium to large enterprises or by proprietors who need asset and liability protection. The company registration is expensive as compared to business structure, and there is an also mandatory annual fee which must be paid to ASIC on the anniversary of company incorporation. The company has to comply with various provisions of Companies Act 2001, and any non-compliance attracts severe consequences. There are, however, several advantages for forming a company, such as separate legal entity, limited liability, easy capital raising, tax benefits. These benefits we'll discuss elaborately in later slide. The suitable business structure varies on individual circumstances, so if you are not sure whether to form a company or register a business name, it is recommended to seek professional advice. It is important to note that there are advantages and disadvantages that relate to all business structures which should be taken into account before deciding on the appropriate business structure. Remember, the business structure can always be changed down the line as it grows. So a business structure can be transferred into a company structure in future if need be. As mentioned earlier, there are several benefits for forming a company. The company has a separate legal entity status distinct from its members and officers. The liability of members is limited so that the shareholders will not be personally liable for any debts of the company. The company provides asset protection. In some cases, the shareholders of companies are liable for companies' debts when they provide personal guarantees to borrow money. Last but not the least, company attracts company tax rate, which is currently 30%. The company registration process is very simple if you have enough knowledge to get it right. ASIC is responsible for registering companies, and there is an initial registration fee to register a new company. First step in company registration process is to determine the type of company that you would like to register. Before deciding on whether to register a proprietary, that is private company, or public company, it is important to understand the requirements and obligation attached to each type of company. A proprietary company must have at least one director. It is not mandatory for proprietary company to have a secretary. The director and secretary, if any, must ordinarily reside in Australia. A public company must have at least 3 directors and at least 1 secretary. At least 2 of the directors and 1 secretary must ordinarily reside in Australia. Please note that one person may simultaneously hold the position of company director and secretary. After you decide the type of company to be formed, you'll have to decide the company name. You should choose a company name that is not similar to already registered company or business name. While deciding company name, you'll have to keep in mind certain words and phrases which cannot be used in company name or can be used only with approval of minister or government agency. ASIC may also refuse to register certain names if they are offensive or suggest illegal activity. A company name must indicate the company's legal elements and liability of members. For example, a proprietary company must include the word proprietary or the abbreviation PTY in its name and also indicate the liability of its members in its name. For example, when the company is limited, the company name must end with word limited or abbreviation LTD. However, it is not necessary to give a company a name. You can choose the Australian company number, that is ACN, to be the company's name. So if you want the ACN to be company's name, while filling the form, that is company registration application, you need to nominate a name and ASIC will allocate ACN as the company name. If you want detailed information on company name, you may view our previous presentation and avoid company name hiccups while setting up a company on the link provided. The next step will be to decide if the company will be operated under the replaceable rules or a constitution or a combination of both. Before you lodge an application to register a company, you must decide how the company will be internally managed. You'll have to decide if the company is going to be operated under the replaceable rules provided in the Act, or its own constitution, or a combination of both. The operating rules are discussed briefly in later slide. Before making an application to register a company, you must get necessary consent from director and secretary before appointing them. A consent from occupier of premises is also required if company does not occupy the premises where its registered office is located. In such case, the occupier of the premises must agree in writing to having the company's registered office located there and to allow company to use its premises. After you have complied with all above requirements, you will have to complete the application form and lodge it with ASIC. The details you will need to provide in the company application are the proposed company name, the type of company, address of registered office and principal place of business, details of ultimate holding company, details of directors and secretary, share structure details, and members' share details. After lodging application for registration of company, ASIC may approve or reject it. If ASIC approves the application, you'll receive the certificate of registration. A company is required to have a minimum number of directors and secretaries. The number of minimum office holders varies according to the type of company, whether it is public company or a private company. Section 201A, subsection 1 of the Corporations Act 2001 states that a proprietary company must have at least one director and that director must ordinarily reside in Australia. Section 204A, subsection 1 of the Act states that a proprietary company is not required to have a secretary, but if it does have one or more secretaries, at least one of them must ordinarily reside in Australia. Section 201, subsection 2 of the Corporations Act states that a public company must have at least 3 directors, excluding alternate directors. At least 2 directors must ordinarily reside in Australia. Section 204A, subsection 2 of the Corporations Act states that a public company must have at least one secretary. At least one of them must ordinarily reside in Australia. If the company does not have enough officers, every effort must be made to ensure that new officers are appointed as quickly as possible to meet the obligations of the company. There is no period in which the company is permitted to function without the required number of officers. If the company does not have sufficient officers, it will be in the breach of the requirement of the Corporations Act 2001. The consequences of this can be that ASIC can serve a penalty notice on the company requiring the company to pay a penalty. The company may also be prosecuted for failing in its statutory obligation to have the minimum number of office holders. There are certain prerequisites before registering a company with ASIC. One of them is obtaining consents from the office holders and members of the proposed company and the occupier of registered office of the company. Company cannot be registered unless these consents are received by the company. Before applying to register a company with ASIC, written consent must be obtained from the people to agree to fill the roles of director, who must be a person who is 18 years or older, secretary, who must be a person who is 18 years or older, and member. Every company must have at least one member. If the registered office of the company will not be occupied by the company, but for example by solicitor or accountant, then the occupier must give consent, a written consent for the company to use that address. The applicant must have relevant consents and agreements before lodging the application for registration of a company with ASIC. These consents are not required to be filed with ASIC. They must be kept as part of company's records after the company is registered with ASIC. A company's internal management may be governed by provisions of the Corporation Act that apply to the company, known as replaceable rules, a constitution, or a combination of both. So let's see what is the difference between a replaceable rules and constitution. Replaceable rules are the basic rules for internally managing a company which are included in the Corporation Act. A table of replaceable rules can be found in the Corporation Act. The table indicates that the subject of the rule and the relevant section of the Act that covers each rule. The content of each of those sections in the Act applies as a replaceable rule. A company may use these rules for its internal governance. This means that company does not need to have its own written constitution with the expense of keeping it updated with the law, even in the event that replaceable rules are amended. A company may include in its constitution, by reference or otherwise, a replaceable rule that does not otherwise apply to it. Also, a provision of a section or subsection that applies to a company as a replaceable rule can be replaced or modified by the company's constitution. A company may choose to adopt a constitution rather than using the replaceable rules. The constitution has the effect of a contract between the company and each member, the company and each director, the company and the company secretary, a member and each other member. Proprietary companies do not have to lodge their constitution when applying to register the company. However, the constitution must be kept with company's records so it is available whenever required. The companies that must be governed by a constitution are public companies limited by guarantee, who are applying to omit the word limited from their name under Section 150 of the Corporation Act. No liability public companies under Section 112. Special purpose companies that want to obtain the reduced annual review fee under Item 103 of the Corporation's Review Regulations 2003. A proprietary company with a single member who is also a sole director has no need for a formal set of rules governing its internal relationship. Such companies do not have to adopt a constitution, although they may do so if they wish. If an additional director is appointed or an additional person becomes a member, the replaceable rules will automatically apply to such companies unless they are replaced by a constitution adopted by the company. If you're looking to register a company, we can help you register company hassle-free. We are an ASIC registered agent and have direct connectivity with ASIC for registration of company. The procedure for registration of a company on our website is very simple, fast, and cost-effective, and you can register a company in less than 20 minutes by answering simple structured questions. Our experienced and professional staff are available to answer your questions and assist you in your company registration application. You can chat live or call us on 02 96 844 199. Once you have registered your company, you get all incorporation documents such as minutes, consent letters, constitution, registers, share certificates, along with the certificate of registration by email. You can also get these documents printed and express couriered to you in a deluxe soft leather filled folder with all documents marked with sign your stickers for a nominal cost of $50 only. You can register a proprietary limited company on our website 24/7. You can download these documents anytime, anywhere from your secured page on our website by logging in with your username and password. So that concludes our webinar for today. I hope you all really enjoyed it. We have recorded this session for you and will email you the link of the recording. If you have any questions, please email them to me on trustdeed.com.au and I'll try to answer them as soon as possible. Thank you so much everybody for today and we hope to see you again in the next webinar. Bye. Have a great day.